some events that are, they should be, if they're going to be in your chart, they should be pronounced. And I've done a lot of charts of people that have passed away. And what gets me is the accuracy of this technique I'm going to teach you. When I say accuracy, I mean accurate. And I'm telling you, I went to the funeral of this young man. My wife and I went to his funeral last Saturday. And it's a very sad event. He's a beautiful, beautiful soul. Personal trainer, diet, nutrition, you know, in his 40s, beautiful, beautiful man. Physically extraordinarily beautiful. And unfortunately, he passed away of colon cancer. And he was so talented and so compassionate and such a loving individual. And the chart I had done for his mother before the death, I had done her chart, and a nephew of hers, and I've done a lot of work for her, but she did ask that I don't use his name, his last name particularly. You know, you won't need it. But the point being that the chart is amazing example of a star-crossed person. No matter how much gifts you have and how compassionate, what a great soul you are, when you come in life with the crosses that he had in his chart, then you know it's pretty predetermined he's going to suffer. The thing about this chart is, I put it up here for you all to see, and with great respect and almost reverence for this gentleman, I was my wife and I were both really brought to tears at the meeting, at the funeral, because it was so moving and such a beautiful event. If things like that we call beautiful, ironically, it was just such a moving event. And this is his chart he was born under. Now the important thing is, I've taught you a lot over the last few weeks. I've taught you a lot about aspects, and they're the hardest things to grab right away. I know it takes time. You can't expect to be overnight to know what a quincunx is, 150-degree aspect. But it's one side of an opposition. Here's Mars here. The opposite point up here would be 16 degrees Libra. That's an opposition. But a sign, one sign off from that is called a quincunx. It's 150 degrees. It's a very critical degree. And it can come from both sides, and if it comes from both sides, like over here to here, it's called a yod. See that? And it's called the finger of God. And it's a very fatalistic symbol when it appears in a chart. The reason is, if you put this point here on the ascendant, if you put this 16 degrees Aries, let's say you put it up here, it's the first house, let's assume it was. And if you wanted to find the point that's 150 degrees from this point to here, it's the 8th house, the house of death, isn't it? If you go the other way, 6 houses, 150 degrees, it's right here, the 6th house. You see what I'm getting at? So, you know, this yod is perfectly set up. In his chart, it falls in the house of death, the 8th house. It falls with Neptune here in Scorpio, which is a sign of death. It's from Mars and the Sun, which is the life force itself, the Sun. It's Uranus and Pluto in Virgo. Guess what part of the body Virgo rules? The bowels. Bowel cancer. So here we have Uranus, which is the unexpected. Surely was at his age. A handsome, beautiful man in his 40s. Uranus conjunct Pluto, the planet of death, in the sign of what? Virgo, which rules the lower intestinal tract and the bowels. There she is. That's all right. No, don't worry. Glad you made it. So, we're looking, Natasha, at a chart of a gentleman. Just lift him up, lift her up, she'll go. She's going to fight you here. Boy, she's stubborn, isn't she? There we go, there we go. Okay. So, just to bring you up to speed, Natasha, we were talking about a chart of a gentleman who passed away a couple weeks ago, and we went to his funeral last Saturday. A very touching event. He's a beautiful man. It was a great memorial to him. He was physically a beautiful man. He was a physical trainer, and he really believed in exercise and diet and all these things. And unfortunately, he became the victim of a disease that killed him, colon cancer. And I had done his chart over the years, not over the months. I'd done his chart, and I looked at it, watched it, and his mother, and we had looked at this chart. I never met him personally, but we met him through the funeral, which is a very moving, celebratory but sad event. And this is his chart, and so I wanted to just share it with you because I wanted you to understand the class you're going to be taking on August 21st is going to teach you how to predict things accurately and to predict events, as tragic as they might be, to be aware of them ahead of time. This particular chart is unbelievably star-crossed, afflicted. It's one of the most afflicted charts I've ever seen in my life. Not only does it have the Sun conjunct Mars, Mars conjunct the Sun in itself can be an affliction if it's afflicted. In other words, at that point, if Mars is afflicted in that point, then it can be a very rough thing to have because it can injure, Mars can mar the spirit. And it can be destructive. It can be violent. It can be cutting. It can be surgery. It can be all those things. The fact that it's joined together here in Aries, very powerful, isn't it? Mars rules Aries. So he had a very strong spirit, Aries, a fighting spirit. He really did. His life, even the struggle against this cancer for 3 years, was an amazing battle. But here's the thing. Look at these aspects. It's got a yod, which is 150 degrees this way and 150 degrees this way. And I mentioned to you, I think I told you before, this is called the finger of God when you have it. The other thing about it is that not only is it considered a major affliction, it has something called the 6th and the 8th house aspect, which is what I just showed them before you walked in. That if you put this point on the ascendant and you go 6 houses this way, you end up to the house of sickness, the 6th house. If you go the other way for the other part of the yod, it's the 8th house, which is the house of death. So just by its nature, it's very fatalistic. It can be death and sickness for sure, depending on the planets involved in that aspect, okay? In his case, it's the Sun itself and Mars, and it's Pluto, the planet of death, joined with Uranus, which is sudden unexpected things, and Neptune, which is hospitalization. Neptune rules what? Hospitals, institutions, prisons, all those things. Self-undoing, sorrow, okay? All that stuff, okay? Yes, Michelle.
I'm confused as to why you would put that aspect or that planet on the ascendant in the first place.
You don't.
But you're saying...
I'm just showing that the best way to understand its meaning is to understand that it's 150 degrees one way and 150 the other way. And it's also associated with that meaning of sickness and death, even though it's not on the ascendant. But that's where it came from, its meaning. From that 150 degree meaning to the 6th house, 150 degree to the 8th house. Okay, it takes on that meaning in the chart. That's what I'm trying to show you. So the point being, the yod, it's called the yod, in this case is very deadly. First of all, Pluto's in the house of death. Pluto's on that yod exactly, 16 to 16. It's conjunct Neptune, which is sudden unexpected, which is surely years you don't expect something like that to happen to somebody. It's also in the sign of Virgo. Virgo rules the bowels. He died of bowel cancer. I mean, what's the odds? You know what I mean? These things. Neptune is in Scorpio, the sign of death. How many messages do you need? You don't need 3 generally to get a pronouncement. If you get 2 or 3, pretty close to accurate. If you get 3, you're pretty much sure, okay? And what are the 3 things you look for? You look for 3 main features out of this. You got the house of death, the planet of death, and you've got the sign of death, all involved in that yoke. I mean, does that speak to you or not? Yes, Lorraine.